Hey guys, this is Dana. I'm discussion leader for week 9. And this week we read 2 chapters in the GCP, Research Writing, and then Rhetoric and Argumentation. We also read the preface, intro, and concept 1 of Naming What We Know. And then we read Rhetoric and Ideology in the Writing class from Berlin. I don't know why, but for some reason I started with Berlin, and I shouldn't have done that. So I read it and didn't really understand what I was reading, so then I went back and read the GCP and the other text first. I'm not sure if Professor Stevenson meant to list them in that order and for me to read them in that order, and I don't even know why I started with the third thing on the list. Probably because it was a PDF and so I read that first. But anyways, it made a lot more sense to me and I really enjoyed the reading once I kind of went back and read them in the order that the professor posted them. I have my information here on a Padlet for you, and I'll zoom in on some of the questions so that you can see a little bit better if you don't have the greatest vision like me. Normally if I shared this Padlet with you, you'd be able to zoom in and do all the things, but it's a video, so you can't do that. One of the things that I kind of wrote down, just kind of to summarize Berlin's writing, was I said social epistemic rhetoric admits it is ideological, but because it makes room for self-criticism and self-correction, it's the preferred rhetoric. It is humble and reflective. And that's what I took from this. So you can see that I have questions here in the purple. And I can zoom in on that for you in a second here. So that way you can see them, right? So you can address these questions if you want, kind of based on Ira Shor's quote, or not a quote, but Berlin referring to Ira Shor's thoughts about the classroom. And then the problems that it does present being that it's less formulaic and the most difficult to carry out in the classroom. So I like how Berlin wrote this, talking about the cognitive and expressionism first, and sort of explaining what the problems with them are, and then, talking about how social epistemic rhetoric is, sort of the preferred rhetoric to use in the classroom. So I kind of like how it was set up. It took me a while to get through it, and I looked up some vocab and all that, but I did enjoy it once I was done. As far as naming what we know, I really like the idea of these threshold concepts. To me, some of this was an aha moment for me, because I think sometimes, because I teach in high school, and we're very focused on Common Core, which many of the things in the Common Core are not threshold concepts. So it makes sense why sometimes teaching is a little frustrating. And so I have 3 questions here that you can address related to that. 2 of them are more specific, and the third is just more generic for you if you want something a little bit more open to respond to. And sorry if you get a cat in the picture, but they kind of annoy me when I get on the computer. I also like the idea of this, why are we naming what we know? It's because it's not enough for us to say that writing is important and that writing is everywhere. And if we're going to teach composition, or not just composition, anything, I think we need to make it very explicit why. Why are we teaching writing, right? So that's my thought on that. Then the GCP, I have 4 questions. Again, the first 3 very specific. The 4th is just more general, like a takeaway of some sort. I had a lot of aha moments in here, or maybe validation for what I'm seeing with my own students about how a lot of times evidence is just sort of thrown in there. It's often maybe from the first few pages or the last pages. Kids are not really internalizing what they're researching, and oftentimes they probably don't even care. So for me, this goes a lot along with some of my philosophies in teaching about choice and engagement and all of that. And so I'm just curious about everyone else's experience with rhetoric in terms of research writing. And then argumentation. Sorry, I'm going to have a cat in the picture. And then finally I just ask sort of a generic question. What connections or contradictions do you see in the reading this week that are interesting, confusing, helpful, or disturbing? I know a lot of us are teachers, but some of us have not been teaching, so I tried to include some generic questions for you to just sort of see the big picture of it all. I know that some of the things that I've been doing with my partner, with Andrew, we've been looking at like multi-genre projects and things like that, so we already have kind of looked at some of the research writing in just looking at that assignment. So again, so those are my questions. Again, this is a Padlet, and they can work out pretty slick. Sometimes the pictures get a little bit funky or they get too big, but you can play around with all that. I'm big into color coding stuff, and I firmly believe in that, but that's about it. So I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say and what writing you present to us this week. Thanks.